Jimbo said yesterday that at some point while you were in Tuscaloosa, he was going to beat your butt. That wasn't the word that he used, but did you have any response for that?
In golf?
I think he meant on the football field.
Well, I'm sure there'll come a day, you know.
Let's go! Right here in the middle of the damn field! Let's bring it down, Tigers on 3!
Hell yeah!
Because this is our house from now on!
Yes, sir!
Tigers on 3! 1, 2, 3, Tigers!
But I'm going to tell you this, we ain't done yet.
I got to ask you about the message on your shirt.
My favorite holiday of the year, I guess, and so just someone gave me a shirt and Merry Christmas. They spelled it wrong, so it was free.
Coach, it's a great day for you, huh?
That's it's better than average, I'll tell you that. We played LSU because, New England, Green Bay, and the Chiefs had somebody scheduled.
You know what we're going to do, though? We've got to quickly call the Hogs for the race back.
Big Toe! Turn that
The fact you're dressed as Darth Vader, do you feel like you were somewhat of a villain in this fight? I mean, you charged out on the field pretty hard.
I'm trying to get our players off the field, because I know we have a big game next week.
All I want to do is fucking eat! I want you to eat! I want you to eat! I want you to want this shit! Do you want it? Do you want it? Show me!
Welcome into the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Breton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And man, do we got a loaded show today. We got two guests on the show. I don't know if we've ever had two guests on the show, but hey, that's just how it worked out. And maybe we'll see more of this in the days and weeks to come with the season chugging along here, with the season right around the corner. If you guys like multiple guests per show, especially when Shane's not available to come on, but we got Bo Bounds, one of the best, not only in the state of Mississippi, but the entire Southeastern Conference. He runs a show there, ESPN 105.9 out of Jackson, Mississippi, Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds. He is just terrific. He delivered the goods. And then, as promised, got an Auburn insider, Nathan King from 24/7 Sports, Auburn Undercover, going to give us the lowdown on what's going on the Plains. But before we get to that, hey, I got to mention the sponsors again. I've said it many times, I'm sure you all know by now, but this is my full-time job. So what's the best way to keep the show going? Take advantage of these sponsorships we've got. HelloFresh, HelloFresh.com/SECMike14. Go there, use that promo code to get up to 14 free meals, courtesy of HelloFresh and FanDuel, the online sportsbook. Head on over to FanDuel.com/SECMike for a 20% initial deposit bonus up to $500. College football just right around the corner. So if you haven't already, here's an opportunity to get $500 free to bet with here. So check those on out. But like I said, we got a loaded show. We got to get into the action. And before we kick it around the league, we just found out one of our favorite SEC coaches is a big fan of the Silver Bullets. Let's head it on over to Sam Pittman.
Reminds me, too. We mentioned it during our radio show, and people started sending us this picture of you. And you got your Pittsburgh State uniform on, go Gorillas, and you were sitting on the bench. And it wasn't until I've been looking at this picture for 2 hours. All of a sudden I was like, is that a Coors Light?
There's a cold silver bullet sitting right by your foot.
So that was a spring game. And I had ACL surgery, but I wanted to get out there a play or two. So I just told the left tackle, I say, don't block me. I ain't going to make the play, but I want to just come out here And then after I got done, I said I'd brought the igloo.
Yeah.
And some silver bullets. And I told the fellas, I said, hey, I'm just going to sit over here and drink some beer, and you're more than welcome to come over here and do it with me. And I sat over there and had me a few drinks there.
All right, so these comments, of course, come from the Marty and McGee show there on SEC Network. So, man, when I just saw this, had to share it. Shane's always drinking them silver bullets. And once I get a better handle on how to do all this video editing, I'll probably be right there downing some silver bullets with them. So, I just thought this was fantastic, and just the latest example of Sam Pittman just being, he's just a guy that if he wasn't a football coach, he'd probably be just a fan of the Razorbacks. And I think that's why he's so endearing and why the Razorback fans have just bought into him, because he's one of them and they're him. So I thought this was a great example. And then I had to throw this little, if you're watching on YouTube, our buddy John Neighbors there runs a Arkansas radio show. He had a tweet featuring Sam Pittman just dousing Steve Sarkisian in Texas with the Coors Light beer hose truck. But I just thought that was fantastic. And, that wasn't the only little clip here that I wanted to start with, because we're all excited about Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC and what that will mean for the nation's best football conference. And we're all hoping and praying that, they'll fix the scheduling issue. That's the main issue right now, I think, with SEC football. Just the fact that some of these Eastern and Western teams rarely see each other. And there's players that go their career, and now we got guys in 6th and 7th seasons, and they're still not getting to every SEC camp. It's really a shame. And the great news is Greg Sankey, the most powerful man not only in the SEC, but hell, probably all of college sports at this moment, he wants to see this change. So let's kick it over. He was recently on Matt Hayes' radio show, XL Primetime in Jacksonville. This is Greg Sankey talking about the need to change up SEC scheduling.
Do you see a 9 or 10 game league schedule in the future?
I've asked our athletics directors, even at our presidents and chancellors level, to take a step back and look at the big picture. I start, Matt, from we need to rotate teams through our campuses with greater frequency. The once in 12 year at games,
right,
for crossover opponents. Man, when I talk about compelling content within 16 teams, compelling competition, volleyball, basketball, football, baseball, the more we can move our teams through our campuses, both traveling to and receiving those visiting teams, that's the focus. Is that a specific set of games right now? No, we're going to look at the alternatives. And we're engaged actively in that work right now. But the challenge has been, let's look at the big picture and figure out how to meet that objective.
All right, so I'd love to have Matt on at some point to discuss this, but I think he's currently banned from coming on the show. If that ban ever gets lifted, I'd love to have him back on the show. He's been on the show before. So, but this is curious comments here, and given the fact that Texas and Oklahoma, everybody publicly. They have to say they're coming to the SEC in 2025. The fact that the commissioner of the league is out here already addressing scheduling with the addition of those two programs, you think they'd be discussing scheduling 4 or 5 years out? I don't think so. I think this is just the latest indication. They can't say it publicly because Texas and Oklahoma still legally contracted to the Big 12 till 2025. They can't say anything different because they'll be breaking the contract. So while Texas and Oklahoma fight to secure their way out of that thing, it's good to know that the SEC's already anticipating their addition here, whenever that is, and they're looking to fix what I still believe is the biggest issue with the SEC, and that's the scheduling. So it's great to see that the nation's best conference is just going to get better. And we already knew that with Texas and Oklahoma. But now we have a very good indication that the league is going to take steps to improve it now that it's a 16-team super conference. All right, but like I said, hey, we got 2 interviews, so I didn't really know how to break this up. I didn't really want to do back-to-back interviews. So the way we're going to do it, let's kick it to our first interview here with Bo Bounds of ESPN 105.9 in Jackson, Mississippi. He truly is one of my all-time favorites. I've been listening to this guy for years and years and years. He's part of the reason I got into this. I just enjoy listening to his show. Not everybody that is going to agree with everything he's got to say, but he makes bold comments, and he's often quite a bit. He's right a lot more than he's wrong, so he just tells it the way he sees it and doesn't hold anything back. And that's part of the reason I think he's so entertaining. So let's kick it over to our interview with Bo Bounds. Hey, Bo, it's Mike, SEC Mike. How's it going, brother?
How you doing, man?
I got to be honest with you. This is a real treat for me. I've been listening to your show since 2014, I'd say.
Oh, man, I appreciate it.
And
I really do.
And believe it or not, I was
Thank you.
living in California. I was living out in Los Angeles, and still the word on your show reached me. I don't know how I found out about it, but I was tuning in every day on the internet, and I'm still doing it to this day.
I love to hear it. I really appreciate it, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. So I won't take up too much of your time. I just some football with you, and
sure,
man, you had me dying. So I got to ask you about your Kirby Smart Ed Ogeron comment the other day. That was just, I almost fell out of my damn chair when you said that.
Well, there's a lot of, I mean, they're not identical, but there's obviously a lot of similarities between the two. They're defensive-minded coaches. They've really struggled with their offense outside of Ogeron, catching lightning in a bottle with Joe Brady and Joe Burrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think they have more of a 20 years ago mentality as far as suffocating their offense and their offensive talent. Because, Mike, at Georgia and LSU, they both have top 5 talent, right? So they should be dynamic and fun and exciting and explosive year in, year out. But yeah, I just don't think it's there. I still believe, here's the way I think they look at it. They think that they can get enough stops in a game and their offense can do enough and they can win. That mentality doesn't work anymore, Mike. It can't score. 15 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, teams could be pretty average. I mean, look at Bama for years and years ago, and Georgia and other teams that were good. Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, they weren't any good on offense, but they would suffocate you on defense, play ball control, score just enough to win games. Well, that approach and that mentality doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The game is spread out and it's vertical, and there's just too many good quarterbacks and too many good skill people. Look at what Ole Miss is doing. Look at what Oklahoma's doing. Mullen had a great year last year. You can tell that he's all about opening it up if he has the right guy. We'll see what they have with Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. But yeah, look, Kirby and Ogeron are phenomenal recruiters. They're at great programs. I mean, goodness. I mean, you're going to wake up every day with more talent than anybody else, but maybe a team or two. And I just don't think that they have the right mindset. Doesn't mean that they can't bottle it every now and then, Mike, just because they're so talented. But I don't know if they have the right mindset to be really fun and explosive on offense on a year-to-year basis, Ogeron and Kirby.
So what about this year? I mean, everybody's picking Georgia in the East. Are you not on that bandwagon at this point?
Well, should they win it? Absolutely. They have more talent than anybody in the East, and they had the best schedule. I picked Florida probably just to mess with people. But I wouldn't be surprised, if Dan was able to pull it off. Should he? No. Is Dan a much better coach? Absolutely. Does he know how to coach the most important side of the ball? Offense, yes. And the most important position, quarterback, yes. But Mike, you're hitting on something. I mean, the East is atrocious. South Carolina is not any good. Tennessee's in major transition. They're not going to be. I mean, they may have a nice team, but they're not going to scare anybody.
Mm-mm.
And then Kentucky, Vandy, and Mizzou don't matter. So when you look at it, there's no question this is low hanging fruit for Kirby Smart in Georgia. But I wouldn't be surprised, Mike, if they screw it up. I can't wait to see. Look, they should win this Clemson game, right? Clemson's lost. I mean, they lost their quarterback, number 1 pick in the draft. They lost ETN, first-round pick. They lost 2 big-time receivers, and I think 2 offensive linemen. And yet Vegas has Clemson
right
as a favorite. over Georgia on a neutral field that doesn't matter in Charlotte, a town that doesn't care about college football. And yet Vegas has Clemson favored, Mike. In other words, that tells me something. That tells me that they believe that Dabo and Venables are better than Kirby and Monken. And that is, Georgia should be a 7+ point favorite, Mike. And yet they're not. And I expect a low-scoring game. Wouldn't be surprised if Venables bottles up JT Daniels and Kirby's offense, whatever that is, and Clemson squeaks out a win. Should Georgia win? No doubt. Will they? I doubt it.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something because Clemson, they're the ones with the new quarterback. Georgia's the one with the returning quarterback too. So it just kind of, adds to what you're saying there. But you hit on something there, Dan Mullen. I know what you think of him. I think the same thing. I think he's one of the best. I think it's totally overlooked what he did at Mississippi State. I think he's, I'm not that old, but I think he's the best coach they've ever had.
Oh, yeah.
Can he, do you think he'll win a national championship? Or, what's the deal with Dan Mullen? Because it seems like every offseason he's got one foot out the door. I mean, does that hurt him?
I don't know. I don't think so. Do I think that he can make the college football playoff? Absolutely, Mike. But he's going to have something special at QB. So we'll see what Emory Jones does, but they believe that Anthony Richardson, it might not be this year, but they think that Anthony Richardson is going to be a dude. And if that's the case, everybody better watch out. I know they were terrible on defense last year. I understand what all happened, but Grantham will get that corrected, in my opinion. They may not be great, but you don't have to be great on defense anymore. We're not really seeing that many elite defenses, but they'll be better. Dan's always going to move the football. So people are freaking out. They're like, well, he lost Trask and he lost Tony and he lost Trask and all these guys. And I'm like, Pitts, sorry. And I'm like, okay, that no doubt. Those were, incredible players.
Mm-hmm.
Dan moves the ball regardless, Mike. So it may look different than Trask to Pitts or to whatever than last year, but he's going to move the football, Mike. I promise. And whether that's zone reading it with Emory Jones and some other players, but yeah, I think Dan can get it done. And, they may be in a little transition this year. I don't mean like crazy because they're still Florida, but they may be in a little bit of transition, but don't be surprised. Do not be surprised. They shouldn't, but don't be surprised if they beat Georgia in the cocktail party.
Bo, has anything in your career been better than Matt Luke getting replaced by Lane Kiffin and Joe Moorhead getting replaced by Mike Leach?
Well, okay, Luke and Moorhead are nice guys. Let me say that. No, it's great. Kiffin and Leach are great. They're both offensive-minded guys. They're fun. They're very talented. They know how to coach the most important position. Now, Lane walked into an unbelievable situation on the offensive side of the football and somewhat took advantage of it last year. They moved the ball against everybody. They didn't really beat anybody. They beat South Carolina, Kentucky, Vandy, and Mississippi State. None of those teams were good, but they moved it up and down the field, scored, were fun to watch. You would think that they'll be even better this year. And then, of course, Leach went through all kinds of craziness. Moorhead had left a bad culture and he ended up down to 46 players, and they just had to hang on. But they showed improvement down the stretch. So I'm optimistic about both teams. Now, Ole Miss may actually make a little more noise, but it's going to be fun, man. And Matt Corral's a dude. He's the best quarterback in the Southeastern Conference, and it ain't these people who think it's JT Daniels, it's not. Matt Corral is the best quarterback in the SEC, and it's not close.
Now, Jimbo Fisher, of course, so many headlines. He got paid $75 million to take over down there. And I think when you pay someone $75 million, winning the SEC is not good enough. And that may be a bold statement because they've never done it, but I'm already looking past that. Will Jimbo Fisher, win a national championship during his time there at Texas A&M?
No. Jimbo won at a place that's got when they're rolling, has that thing we call the path of least resistance at Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
And it was before Dabo got up and running, and the ACC wasn't any good. Still, tip of the cap for doing it. He also didn't pull a monster in the championship game. That was an overachieving, kind of weird Auburn team. But anyway, no, I don't expect Jim. I think Jimbo makes his offense too complicated, and I don't think he's willing to adjust and adapt to what you need to run this day and age. And so even though they recruit gangbusters and have a bunch of talent and so on, I do not believe that he'll win a title at A&M.
Now, what are your thoughts on Texas and Oklahoma coming into the league?
Love it. Love it. I think it's awesome. I mean, to have the Longhorns and Sooners it's like the gift that keeps on giving, Mike. For us and sports media in the Sun Belt, it's great. It will only make it'll only make it more fun and the content better if you know what you're doing. And those are two programs that we had already, talked about a good bit over the years. And we have great contacts in both places. And I plan on going out there and hanging out a little bit. But I am just so fired up. Great move by the Southeastern Conference and Commissioner Sankey, because Texas and Oklahoma are just going to make it even more fun. And I hope we break it up into the 4 pods or 4 divisions.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody starts playing each other more. And this division thing is so outdated and antiquated. And we, it makes it even more fun for all of us on Saturdays, which is what we want.
Yeah, and I guess that is the $1 million question of how they break it up. I don't want to get your whole thoughts on it, but Mississippi and Mississippi State, if they do go to a pod, who do you want to see in their pod?
Well, I'd like to see Arkansas and A&M, I guess, or something like that instead of LSU.
Mm-hmm.
But, a lot of people seem to believe it'll be Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU, and Arkansas. That's not bad. I'm almost good with anything. Both of them want to be out of the Bama deal.
Right.
So
everybody does.
We'll see, though. Mississippi State's 90 miles from Bama, so I don't know what I don't know if it'll necessarily go along, exact geographical lines. But as long as they avoid playing Bama every year, both MSU and Ole Miss, I think it's a tremendous win for the two programs.
Well, speaking of Alabama, how much longer is Nick Saban going to terrorize the SEC? Because it seems like every time he's slowing down, he just figures out a way to make his program that much better.
Yeah, I thought several years ago he would be closer to done by now, and he is not. And I think COVID kind of freaked him out because he went home and didn't really have anything to do. And so he realized he liked the journey and the challenge of coaching Alabama football. So I wouldn't be surprised, Mike, if he coaches another 5 years, maybe even more. But that's a long time to put up with Saban and the Crimson Tide, and he's the greatest to ever do it. You got to tip your cap.
All right, last question for you, Bo. I really appreciate all your time, and I won't hold you to this because so many things could change between now and then. But if you had to pick a winner of the Egg Bowl right now, who are you going with for the upcoming season?
I usually pick the home team, but right now I'll pick Ole Miss because of they have the better quarterback. And I like Will Rogers, by the way, at Mississippi State. He's just young. And he doesn't have the same dudes around him as Matt Corral does.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure what the MSU offensive line is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give a slight edge to Ole Miss because Corral is incredible and I think should be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. One more I forgot to ask you about Arkansas. Is that the toughest job in the country? Because, my God, the expectation and you could have a top 20 recruiting class and you could still potentially got the worst recruiting class in that division.
Right. Yeah, I think Arkansas and Nebraska are both brutal jobs. But, yeah, Arkansas is tough because they still have Frank Broyles expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was 45 years ago. And the ESPN democratized college football, and there's been a paradigm shift. And although the Razorbacks can be, salty and good when run right and so on, they're never going to be what they were in 1972.
All right, he's Bo Bounds, host of Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds on ESPN, The Zone 105.9. I really appreciate you, Bo. You're one of the best out there, truly.
Mike, I appreciate you saying that. I really enjoyed it, man. Reach out anytime, and I hope you have a great football season, bud.
All right, so just want to say thanks again to Bo for hopping on the line. You can follow him at Bo Bounds. That's in the show notes, and there's also a link to his program. Got to check it out. I'm telling you, not just for everyday SEC content, but when there's trouble brewing down there in the state of Mississippi, his show is just an incredible listen. And they even have online. They got YouTube too, so check out the YouTube as well. But I cannot recommend that show enough. Bo Bounds, really appreciative of him coming on the show. But, hey, let's get this thing rolling here. Let's kick it around the league.
Now let's go around the league.
What is 12 personnel? I got to get up 2 tight ends and 2 wide receivers, or 1? I'm just kidding. I know what 12 personnel is. So.
Worry about playing Alabama. I can't figure out whether or not the Big Ten and Pac-12 are going to yo-yo around and play football with us or not. I mean, they're playing great. Love it. Love the game. Awesome game. It's unbelievable for our country. It's great for our universities. It's great for our towns when we play. It's great for our young men. I personally think it's the greatest game in the world. So if they elect to play, great. If they don't, that's on them. I got enough crap to worry about with preparing for Alabama and figuring stuff out at Mizzou. So
the team is in great spirits. I know there was a lot of doom and gloom. I saw and heard a lot about how the hopes of our season hinged on the results of an MRI, and frankly, that's bullcrap. We've got a hell of a football team, and whether one guy's in or out, we got 117 other guys that are ready to step up no matter who's out. We got Kevin.
All right, I'm not a big opening statement guy, and plus you guys are going to ask whatever you want to know anyway. So let's just go ahead and get started. Is there any questions?
Young man from Destrehan, Louisiana. Hold on a second. Hey, guys! Hey! I'm having a press conference, okay? Thank you. Great young man.
All right, got to start here in College Station, where we had arguably the biggest news of the day in the SEC, and this was to be expected. But old Haynes King, the redshirt freshman, he has been named the starting quarterback. Let's kick it over to Jimbo, who interestingly announced this during a ESPN radio show there in Houston.
Great. How's Haynes played?
Played great. We talked to him yesterday, and right now Haynes will be a starter, and Zach will be the backup right now. But like we had a great talk yesterday, I feel very comfortable with both guys. I think both guys can win and play well. I think both guys had an outstanding camp, and just the criteria of how we went through things. And we had a really good conversation about yesterday. That's how we'll go into this going into this first game, as we say. But like I say, those things are ever changing. I mean, you don't want them to change, but at the same time, competition and guys get better and how they play, and also the roles and what may be needed for each game.
All right, so an interesting way to reveal that information after being asked about it repeatedly in all these pressers. But, no real stunning news here. I think most people, and myself included, have been saying Haynes King is probably going to be the guy. And that's no slight on Zach Calzada. I think he continues to progress. He's got the big arm. Jimbo says he's got an NFL arm. So certainly I don't think this is the last we've heard of Zach Calzada. We may even see him on the field this season for the Aggies. They may need him. So who knows? But given the fact that A&M has 4 new starters on the offensive line, a little bit of a transition there, it makes a ton of sense that you're going to go with the more mobile guy in Haynes King, who can also throw it. Make no mistake, he's not just a runner here, because to fully utilize that offense, they need the downfield passing game. But like I said, to be expected here, son of a coach, won I believe he won the Texas State Championship. He either won it or took his team to the championship there as a junior or senior. I can't remember, but so much buzz about Haynes King, and the comparison that I keep seeing over and over. I've seen Billy Lucci have this one as well as others, but they say this kid, Haynes King, reminds them of Colt McCoy. And that's probably not exactly the comparison that Aggies want to hear, but hell, Colt McCoy, I think he's still playing in the NFL. And if you go back to his time at Texas, he's one of the best they've ever had. And that, of course, went to the national championship game, lost to Nick Saban in Alabama, but that was a game where Colt got knocked out early. So who knows? I mean, that's one of the greatest what-ifs in Texas history. Alabama would have still beat him. But, hell, he led them there, and he was a prolific college quarterback. And if Texas A&M is getting similar production from the quarterback position in the years to come under Haynes King, I think they'll take that, even if they hate that comparison. So Texas A&M, and they've got a fairly easy schedule here right out the gate to kind of break Haynes King into his new role as the team's starting quarterback. But I think that's going to prove to be the right move, and got to get him up to speed before that SEC opener against Arkansas. All right, next let's kick it on down to Nashville, where Clark Lee and the Vanderbilt Commodores are preparing for their season opener against ETSU. And this is a team we've not hit on here recently, but very interesting quarterback battle. Keep talking about that all training camp, and it's interesting on many different levels. We've hit on the fact that Ken Seals and Mike Wright, maybe two of the best. They may be the two best players on the Vanderbilt team. So it's a nice problem to have if you're Vanderbilt, to have a wealth of quarterbacks, because you never know when you're going to need to go to the backup. But I certainly think both these guys are going to see the field early and often. And here's the thing, because Vanderbilt's in a little bit of a tricky spot, because we all know, if you listen to this show, Ken Seals, we think the world of him. He's a great pocket passer, whereas Mike Wright is the more mobile guy. But here's the thing. With Vanderbilt, the main issue that I'm hearing right now is the offensive line is just struggling. And that has led to the defense kind of having their way in some of these scrimmages. And so in an ideal world, I don't think that there would be any doubt that you'd go with Ken Seals. And I certainly expect he'll still be the starter. But what I'm trying to say here is, you could have Tom Brady back here, but if you can't protect him, it's not worth anything. And if you got a more mobile option, again, kind of going back to Texas A&M and Haynes King, why, that made so much sense to me. Sometimes you got to go with the more mobile guy while the offensive line gets some continuity and get some experience under their belt. So that's why I say Vanderbilt's in such a unique position here, because you may have to play Mike Wright a little bit more than you want to. Not that you don't want to play him, but you certainly don't want to sit a guy like Ken Seals. So I'm fascinated to see how this plays out. And it's interesting that they've not named a starter just yet going into this opener against ETSU. Again, I still think it'll be Ken Seals, but we'll see how much Mike Wright plays. I anticipate that he'll play quite a bit, and it may be because of that offensive line struggling to protect the passers this year. So let's kick it over to Clark Lee, who talks about this quarterback battle, talks a little bit about the Vandy United project. They've updated that, and the $300 million investment, that's still on track. And we've already seen they've got new lockers and everything like that in Vanderbilt. So things are progressing under Clark Lee, and he sounds pretty fired up about it.
Well, I knew that the Vandy United project was on the books and on the brink of being announced. And there was some early conceptual stuff that I was aware of. But, I think what we've done and what Candace has done and Chancellor Diermeyer is just continued through this journey to find that highest level potential of how this facility can can really reshape football, on this campus. And obviously there are, other sports that will benefit as well. So, I mean, it's been exciting for me, and I think with every, update or upgrade, I get more excited about what the plan is, what the potential is here, and how it's really meant to position our football program in a place where we can launch, and be competitive in our league for a long time. Not yet. I feel like we're getting close. I think the scrimmage helped us kind of move along in that process. And I do want to focus on the chemistry of the group too. I think that's important heading into game one, but we're not ready to make that announcement yet. We still have some time left here where we're technically still in training camp. We've done a little opponent prep. We started that today, but just giving it a little more time. Strategically, there's no advantage. So internally to solidify the chemistry and so that we can have some confidence with, it's just nice to know where the role is. Publicly, there's no reason to really make an indication until we play. He's a tough runner. He's a leader. He's a guy that as our kind of top running back right now, knows it at a high level. So he doesn't, in all situations as a pass protector, as a runner, he has a command over what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. That's going to go a long way just in allowing the offense to find rhythm. I think as a runner, he's tough. When he gets vertical, he has a second gear that he can hit, and we've seen that from spring into fall where he breaks a run and he's not caught. And so I think there's an element of explosiveness that will be helpful to us.
And I also wanted to, make note, again, kind of like Clark Lee's saying here, the Temple transfer running back, Ramon Davis, just keep hearing great things about him. And certainly based on what Clark Lee just had to say there about him, it looks like the Temple transfer is cemented as their Vanderbilt's new starting running back. And, I think he's going to be a big surprise this season in the SEC to make this more of a balanced attack with these two quarterback, Seals and Wright. So it's interesting. Vanderbilt, very sneaky team. Cam Johnson at receiver. I believe it's SEC StatCat who's got Abdur Rahim as one of the other receivers. He's got him as the most underrated receiver in the entire SEC. So there's some interesting pieces there. And you put all these together, we haven't really even talked about the defense. Apparently the defense is the one that is kind of the more standout unit here in training camp. So, hey, I'm not trying to get too pumped up. I just did a Vanderbilt podcast, and the host said, week one ETSU that's the biggest game of the year. So I'm not trying to put the cart in front of the horse, but there's a lot to like about this Vanderbilt Commodore team heading into the season, at least when you're talking about the pieces, ideal pieces to make this an explosive offense. And now you got a coaching staff that knows what they're doing when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. So I think better days are ahead for Vanderbilt, and they're coming just this season. All right, sticking in the SEC East, let's jump on down to Missouri real quick, where every time I hear from this guy, Steve Wilks, the new defensive coordinator, of course, former NFL defensive coordinator and head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, just come more and more impressed with this guy. And, he's got a tall task in front of him. Week 2, slowing down Chris Rodriguez and company and Will Levis and Liam Cohen, who I assume they have no film on what the Kentucky offense is going to look like and it's kind of the same. Kentucky's got no film on what Missouri's going to do on defense outside of can't even call it a spring game. It was such a mockery of a spring game, but Kentucky didn't even have a spring game for people to study. So 2 NFL minds going head-to-head week 2. I cannot wait for that. But, of course, Missouri's got Central Michigan in the season opener. That's not a game they can overlook either. Missouri's playing at home. The spread right now is 13.5. That's the lowest spread among an SEC team that's hosting an opponent in the league the opening weekend. So it's pretty interesting there. Not saying Missouri's on upset alert or anything like that. Certainly not. But, they can't overlook that one is basically what I'm saying. Can't be overlooking that to that monumental matchup against Kentucky. But so let's kick it over to Steve Wilks, who met with the media here recently on his defense on his coaching method, and he really talked up Trajan Jeffcoat. And this is something we've hit on this offseason, but Missouri keying in on those turnovers. And we all know that's something every coordinator says. We're going to lead the league in turnovers. We're going to focus on turnovers. And it's one thing to sit here and spiel about that and say you're going to do it. But Steve Wilks, his units led the NFL in turnovers multiple seasons. And given the fact that he knows how to do it in the NFL, I'm pretty damn confident he knows how to do it in the SEC.
Just to give you guys an update of where we are, finished training camp, and I'm very pleased right now with where we are as a defense. I still feel like we have a long way to go in order to reach our goals, but I like the direction in which we're moving into. Everything we do starts up front with our defensive line. They have definitely set the tone this summer. They're going to be definitely the strength of this defense. When you look at Kill Byers, Chris Turner, Darius Robinson, Isaiah McGuire, all those veteran guys are going to, set the standard of how we play, and it starts up front. I'm very pleased with Blaze as an addition, along with Devin at the linebacker position. Those guys have really stepped up and shown some promise, and we're going to have a very strong competitive, competition and rotation on the back end, particularly with the corners. So, yes, definitely pleased. Long way to go, and looking forward to getting started. I think it's just really being consistent. We talk about this all the time. It's just letting the guys know that you're accountable in every form. That level of commitment and how you approach each and every day, and knowing that you expect the same in return. So I never waver. I'm the same guy every day. I'm going to hit you right between the eyes and tell you how I feel, and I'm going to love you up just the same. When I get on you hard, I'm going to love you up hard. So I think that's how you build trust, with the consistency and how you operate. Good football player, so good guys know how to jump right back in the mix, they get right back on the saddle, and they know how to just, perform well, and that's what he is. One of the things that I noticed, I knew he was a dynamic pass rusher, but the guy's phenomenal in the run game. Very stout, can set the edge, can dominate a tight end. So I'm very pleased when you start talking about his overall play. You know what? Don't have a number for you, but I tell you, it's been pretty good, to be honest with you. And that's been our mantra. That's one of the things I preach the day one when I walk through the door. Is taking the ball away on defense and scoring. So I'm going to continue to emphasize that, and hopefully that'll be a great showing for us this year.
All right, so I think you get a sense of how in command this guy is and confident, and I really like the part he was talking about his coaching techniques, about riding guys hard and loving them at the same time, just as hard if need be here. So certainly he's talked about it's going to be a transition for him. He's been coaching in the NFL for decades. Now he's got to coach college players. He's done it before, so it's not completely foreign to him. But that'll be an adjustment this season, and I'm sure that's been something that there's been a learning curve there in spring and fall, and now gearing up to the season, it's time to go. And again, not saying I have any doubts on Steve Wilks. He's got more experience than just about any coach out there. So I just thought Missouri fans would appreciate these comments from their defense coordinator. Sticking on in the SEC East, let's kick it on down next to Lexington, where defensive coordinator. Hey, we're going on a defensive coordinator spiel here, but Brad White, the Wildcat coordinator, one of the more underrated coordinators in the entire SEC, met with the media. And, one of the biggest things there for Kentucky, they've got to find pass rush. Where's that going to come? Obviously with Jamon Davis, first-round pick. Before that, it was Josh Allen. I mean, Kentucky just seems to find these guys and develop them. And, J.J. Weaver looks like maybe the next one, but, of course, he got hurt against Florida. They're anticipating that he's ready to go this season. But how realistic is it, a guy coming off ACL to be at 100%? We'll see. So how does Kentucky manufacture this pass rush? That's one of the biggest question marks with the Kentucky Wildcats heading into the season. That's something Brad White discussed, and he also gave an update here on J.J. Weaver.
Anything new to report on the pass rush? Nothing new. Again, I've been pleasantly pleased with Jordan Wright. I think he's ready to take the next step, and we're going to need him to. from as a rusher. He's really focused hard on that. But it can't be just one guy. It can't be two guys. With Pascal, it's got to be a whole bunch of guys that get it, and they've got to rush as a group, and especially when it's just 4-man rush. And you play 4-man rush in coverage. They've got to understand what the guy next to them is doing, and they don't just service themselves, they have to service that entire group, and we're getting better, but as we get closer to game time, we've got to get narrowed down to who those 4 guys are, those primary 4 in nickel, so they can get a lot of reps together. And so far, we've just been repping a lot of different combos to try to figure out who's the best. But we'll start over these next 2 weeks really starting to tighten out who that group's going to be.
JJ has to get back to helm first and foremost, but whenever he does get back to a spot where he can handle the majority of the snaps, do you kind of view Jordan Wright strictly as a jack, or could he play that other outside lineman?
No, Jordan can play either. Obviously, we're going to be really judicious, with JJ bringing him back. And the nice thing about Jordan is he's played both for his entire career. So, I'd anticipate at some point during the season that those 2 guys are on the field together. But at the same time, it's nice when if you talk about like having a starting pitching unit, right? And you can rotate those 2 and they come in fresh. And so we've definitely got options.
All right, so I talk about Jamin Davis and Josh Allen because maybe the next one could be Jordan Wright. I mean, he was at one point SEC Player of the Week last season in Kentucky's win over Mississippi State. Of course, that was the game. I believe they won 24-2, and that kept Mike Leach's scoring streak alive with his defense. Of course, that was later broken. But, so it's interesting. Brad White's hyping up this Jordan Wright. That's a name to watch. Could he be the next star Kentucky defender? I don't know, but the fact that Brad White's talking him up, you got to be that's one guy to watch here if you're a Kentucky Wildcat fan. And I like the fact that Brad White is not counting on one guy. We're all looking for the next Josh Allen. Well, hell, everybody is at every university, and there's not many like that guy. So it's unrealistic to ask a guy to get 18 sacks, whatever he had that his final season there, but maybe you can get that from 3 or 4 guys if you combine all their production, and that certainly seems like a more sound method and what Kentucky and Brad White is counting on this year from their unit. And last thing on Kentucky, I just thought this was fantastic. Brad White talking about the John Schlerman wall out there, of course, the late, great Kentucky offensive line coach that passed away last season in the middle of the year. Here's Brad White talking about what it means to see that John Schlerman wall there.
Can you tell me about this sign, the Schlerman sign, what that means to this group, and is it a constant reminder being right there? You guys see it all the time.
What an unbelievable tribute, to walk out today and to see that, and to know every time we walk into the stadium, whether it be for a scrimmage, a practice, a game, and you look at really what the model of what being a Kentucky football player, coach, alumni, you name it, he was all of that. And I think it's a great reminder, not just for the people that are in this program that were around him and knew Coach Schlerman, but for those that didn't. And Coach always said, we talked about he was the great American, but he's really sort of the great Kentuckian, and everybody gets to see it when they come to Kroger Field now, and that's really, really moving for us. Like it was an emotional tribute.
All right, last team to hit on. Let's jump on down to the Plains, where Bryan Harsin met with the media here on Wednesday, talk about being in his COVID protocol. And the good news is he's going to be back a lot sooner than anticipated. He's going to be back, scheduled to be back at least next week on Monday. So he'll be there for virtually the entire week, heading into the opener there against Akron. So that's great news. Love to hear that. And Derek Mason, it sounds by all indication he's back even sooner. So, a little disaster averted here. And I've seen a lot of Auburn fans saying, well, hell, now that he's had the COVID, that means he's good for the next couple months. So, hey, there's the other side of that is the other side of the coin can be positive there as well. So I was excited to hear that. And we got some comments here from Bryan Harsin. So let's kick it over to the Auburn head coach.
All right. Well, thank you all for your patience and flexibility given the development of last week. So I'm at home, isolating, feeling good, and hope it continues to be that way. I realize I'm fortunate to be able to say that so very obviously from what we've seen. This impacts everyone differently. So while I'm here, I've been participating in meetings and practices, and I just want to make sure that you all know our coaches, players. I can't say enough just about our staff, how they've responded. They've done a great job. Coach Schmedding has stepped up, and we've been able to operate like we normally would during this week in those meetings and on the practice field. So as I said on Friday, we have plans in place for this. And certainly, when things happen with COVID, the teams that are able to navigate this and implement the plan properly and execute it at a high level are going to be the ones that I think are going to be most successful navigating through this pandemic. Because as we've seen, that coaches, there's been some coaches out, and the ones that we've had step up and the way we've operated, I think those guys have done a very good job. So, right now we're following our mitigation protocols. We'll continue to do so. So a little bit of my timeline here. The test I took on Thursday this last week was part of what we've been regularly doing. And Dr. Goodlett informed me of my result. And so we proceeded with the standard protocols for a positive test, no different for me than anybody else in our program. As of right now, based off my timeline, I should return to the facility on Monday of this next week. So in time for game week and preparing our team for that week of practice. No other coaches or players were quarantined based off my test result. That's due to in part of our mitigation protocols that we have in place and that we've been following. So I'm proud of that.
All right. So there you got it from Coach Harsin. And, I thought this was his best media availability he's had yet at Auburn. So maybe a little bit more, I don't know, just not as long-winded and he really seemed to come with a purpose on this one and really speaking to the fans and the recruits and everybody listening. So the media, of course, especially who's on the call with him there. So I hope we get more of this Bryan Harsin moving forward, and I think he'll play a lot better across the SEC doing that. But hey, who better to talk to about the Auburn Tigers than Nathan King of Auburn Undercover, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Let's kick it over to our interview with Nathan King. All right, we're pleased to be joined once again by Nathan King. He's been on the show before, and he works for the 24/7 Sports Network, covering the Auburn Tigers for Auburn Undercover. And you can follow him at Nathan King 24/7 Sports, and you got to listen to his podcast, the Auburn Undercover Podcast. Nathan, I really appreciate you hopping on the line.
Yeah, of course. How are y'all doing?
Hey, we're doing good. But before we get even into the football stuff, I mean, I even hate that I've got to bring this up, but are you in the COVID protocol like everybody else down there on the plains?
Very fortunate, I am not. I actually went home. I went and saw my wife's family. Her mom is immunocompromised, so she's having to be definitely, super safe. And we did all the testing, all the necessary stuff. We basically quarantined for the past couple weeks, and we got to stay with them at their house for a few days for the first time in like a year and a half. So that was really fun and definitely something super special that my wife really appreciated and enjoyed a lot. So no, we're doing really good. We're all safe and healthy. Hope y'all can say the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's great to hear. But can you give us information, because obviously Bryan Harsin, he's come out and he's in the COVID protocol, and Derek Mason has come out and said even though he's been vaccinated, he got it. So, I don't want you to reveal any players or anything like that, but based on your reporting, I mean, do you have an idea how many staff members and players and all that this has affected?
I gathered, so basically most of this stemmed from testing last Thursday. So as we're recording this on Wednesday evening, so about a week ago, some players, several players, I would say, a good handful. Not any specific chunk of any one position group, so I guess that's positive for Auburn. And then a couple coaches in addition to, obviously Bryan Harsin was, the notable one, and then it comes out later that, we kind of knew at the time, we reported at the time, Derek Mason, but then he ends up coming back and saying, hey, he got it a little bit before Harsin. He actually was back in the building. He was back at practice today on Wednesday. So, no, we spoke to Bryan Harsin today from inside his house. He Zoomed us from his house, and definitely one of the more insightful times we've talked to him. He definitely felt like he had to make a point about this COVID stuff. A lot of people thinking that he is not necessarily taking it very seriously. I know a lot of people have just been speculating that and coming out and saying that, and that's kind of become the narrative, but he made sure to kind of knock that out of the way and say that's certainly not the narrative. He went on to explain everything that Auburn is doing to not only fight this virus and get players vaccinated and do all the good stuff you got to do, but also educate and promote. I mean, even the university president was in there yesterday promoting the benefits of the vaccine. So they've been doing that a lot. So now Bryan Harsin said he'll be back on Monday. Again, recording this on Wednesday, so he'll be back on Monday just in time to start game week in preparation for the season opener. And he said, based on all the other players that are in protocol, they should be in pretty good shape based on the timeline. I think they're expecting to have a full roster for that season opener, given there are no other outbreaks on the team.
So was that your main takeaway from Wednesday's press availability with Coach Harsin? Was just his stance on the vaccines and whatnot? Because I gotta be honest with you, I've sat through all his press conferences and. They're not the most engaging and entertaining, but this seemed to be a little bit more personable of a Auburn head coach to me. What were your thoughts on that?
I think that's the right word. You could just kind of tell that he had that initiative and definitely wanted to get something off his chest. He was reading off a note card. This was something that was really important to him. And, kind of what I gathered is that, I don't know if he took offense. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think he was bothered by the fact that this had been a narrative that had started about him. I think, whether or not he is vaccinated, again, that is something that has come up a bunch. He has still not answered and said that he is. So obviously that has led everybody to believe that he is not vaccinated. Mm-hmm. But I think the point he wanted to get across was, look, even if, I'm me and you do you, but, we have been promoting like crazy the benefits of the vaccine. And this is the first time really that he went out and spoke at length about the benefits and about how much promoting they've done. Because I think he kind of rubbed people the wrong way at SEC Media Days when he was talking about, the fact that he wasn't pushing it too hard because it was a personal decision. He also said they talked about the pros and cons. I know him saying cons kind of, people didn't really, understand that very much. And so he's really done a heel turn here. And it's definitely trying to make people aware of how seriously he's taking this right now, even if he himself has not taken the vaccine. So
switching gears to more entertaining stuff to talk about here, but Bo Nix and TJ Finley, how's that shaping up? And, I listen to the Auburn Undercover podcast, so I know what you've already reported on it, but can you share how's the quarterback competition down there on the Plains?
Yeah, it's as deep a room as they've had in a long time. And there's nothing that shows the importance of that more than what happened in the past week. Obviously Bo Nix was not one of those guys, and TJ Finley not one of those guys that was out because of COVID. But, it could happen. Your quarterback isn't immune. Your starting quarterback isn't immune to that. So you really just never know what's going to happen this season. And the fact that Auburn now believes that it has pretty quality depth at not only the backup position with TJ Finley, but the third stringer, Demetrius Davis, he's a 4-star freshman out of Houston. He's the winningest quarterback in high school football history in Texas, surpassing even Kyler Murray. He's done a lot of good stuff this preseason. He has been a guy who was there for the spring, really kind of developed there, started to learn the playbook, and he's really turned some heads in scrimmage settings and making things happen outside the pocket. But I just kind of wanted to give him his due real quick before saying that it is Nix and Finley, the one and the two right now. They are far and away. Obviously, you have the most advantages right now. Harsin did say that, if we were to play a game tomorrow, that Bo Nix would be the starter. That should not be a surprise to anybody who's been paying attention to anything, I think TJ Finley has been really helpful. He's been really beneficial for this room. I think he's exactly what Bo Nix needed. A guy that is not just going to come. They didn't need somebody who was going to come in and try to take his job. Like, obviously, Finley's trying to take his job, but they didn't need somebody to come in and replace him and be that guy that's head and shoulders, right next to him. They needed a guy like Finley who's going to nip at his heels, provide that pressure, and force Bo to be the best version of himself every day in practice. Because something that not only Nix has said to us, but also all of his teammates, is that he's the best when he's a competitor. And I think that showed in 2019 when he beat out Joey Gatewood and to kind of have some magical moments that season. There's that pressure going on that you don't want to lose that starting job. Nix is definitely feeling that right now, and seems like all signs are pointing to him having a pretty good fall camp. Finley's coming along well, but I really just don't foresee a situation where Finley is really too dangerous to that starting quarterback job. Maybe let's talk again, week 7 or week 8 if things start to crumble down. But for right now, for the way things are going, Bo has the good control of this offense, and he'll be the starter for the foreseeable future.
Now, we all know Tank Bigsby, one of the best not only running backs, but maybe overall players in the SEC, just voted to the coaches All-SEC first team. And Sean Shivers, we know what we're getting in him. He's a very solid player. But any concerns with the running back group behind them? I mean, who's Auburn's third guy there? Because you got to think in a Mike Bobo system, they're going to lean heavily on the ground game.
Sure. Yeah, there can be some concerns. I think the concerns would be on a numbers basis. So I think the magic number for a running back rotation is probably 5, even if you don't use that 5th guy very much, or maybe you don't even use that 4th guy very much. But you need to have 5 running backs that you can rely on. Right now, Auburn's only got 4 scholarship running backs. The 2 guys behind, like you said, Bigsby and Shivers, we know what we're getting with that 1-2 punch. You've got Jordan Ingram, who is a second-year player. He's at Central Michigan last season. He did not play, but he's an in-state kid from Alabama, from Mobile, that wanted to go to Auburn that first time around, ended up not working out that way. Now he's able to transfer in. He's kind of that taller. He's like 6'1", a little more slender. He'll look like a Kerryon Johnson when he's out there. He's got that kind of a build. He's a very smooth, patient runner, good catching the ball out of the backfield. And then you've got a true freshman in Jarquez Hunter, which, I mean, there are many people within the program that don't think that he is the diamond in the rough of this recruiting class. Only a 3-star prospect. But he's the number 1 player in Mississippi in terms of an offensive perspective. And then he's also the leading rusher in Mississippi last season. And just a really, really productive player at the high school level. He's kind of that short, stocky, kind of reminds you of a Trey Mason, the way that he's able to just kind of punch his way through the line of scrimmage and find an area to burst through. So you've got your 2 different types of backs there. Right now what we've seen in fall camp is that they're going to kind of split that number 3 job. So I would expect maybe both of those guys to get anywhere from 3, 4, to 7 carries a game, that kind of thing, just because their skill sets are so different. But you're exactly right. I mean, there could be some concerns, just because my thing is what if something happens to Tank Bigsby? We saw him have some injuries last season, and now you're asking 2 first-year players within your program, 2 first-year players overall, actually, to come in and have a big impact on your offense when, like you said, Mike Bobo likes to run the ball a lot. So we'll see how that goes. They've had some good walk-on production so far, but that's certainly not something you want to rely on either.
Well, speaking of question marks, it's been a question mark seemingly for a number of years there on the Plains, but what about the offensive line with Will Friend, first-year offensive line coach, running Bobo's system there? How settled is that group with, we're basically a week out from game day? Not settled. They wanted this thing done a little faster. There have been, so I guess I should have prefaced early on. I haven't really done many other radio stuff or podcast stuff since fall camp started. Mm-hmm. But we've got, and I don't know how much of this even applies, but the coaches are asking us, obviously they can't force us to do anything, but asking us not to disclose injury information from practice, stuff like that, yada yada. I just don't want my access pulled, so I'm just going to go along with it, whatever. But I will just say that the offensive line has had guys miss a good bit of practice this preseason, and so when you thought you knew what you had, things were kind of thrown. A wrench was kind of thrown into things, and now they had to try a lot of different lineups. Luckily, they had 8 guys from last season who have starting experience. Because of the injuries, they got some extra starting experience in there.
my best guess right now, and Bryan Harsin actually gave us a 2 deep on the offensive line today, which was pretty nice. Maybe he felt bad for, not being able to talk to us after the scrimmage. But my best guess right now, you've got Austin Troxell. I think he's going to take that left tackle spot. Brandon Council, who got injured last season, he was their best offensive lineman. He's playing right guard. I believe it looks like he's going to actually nail down that left guard spot. Nick Brahms, first team All-SEC. We know what you got with him. He's going to be the center. At right guard, Keandre Jones, who came in for Council after he got hurt. I think he's going to be that guy at right guard. And then right tackle is a battle between Brodarius Ham, who made the coaches All-SEC team on the third team, and then a guy named Brendan Coffey, who's a JUCO player, has developed pretty well in the past year. So we'll see what happens between those. But no, it's not locked down, and I think they wanted it to be, and seems like it might be a couple weeks before it is. But the good news for Auburn, my coworker Mark Murphy called it a couple exhibition games they've got coming up. They play Akron and Alabama State. No offense to those programs, but I think Auburn, that's a pretty helpful situation before that Penn State game to maybe try to figure things out on the O-line.
And how's the secondary coming along under Derek Mason? I know there's a lot of talent there, and they've had some transfers. One in particular, Donovan Kaufman's already familiar with Coach Mason's system, but how are those pieces fitting together? Do you think that'll be a strength of this Auburn team?
I think it's the best. I think it's the best unit on the roster. I think linebacker is probably not far behind it. What we saw with Chandler Wooten today was named a captain. I think their 3 linebackers are really, really good. But yeah, that secondary, it's just loaded, and it got even better this fall, like you talked about with those transfers. They brought in 3 transfers in the secondary, all of which are making a really big impact in fall camp. Donovan Kaufman, Harsin said today, he's their starting nickel. So came right in, like you said, was comfortable with Mason's system and is slotted right in there at the nickel spot. Darius Knighton has been the starting safety alongside Smoke Monday for most of fall camp. That's still not set in stone. There's some competition going on there, but looks like he'll be the guy. Knighton came from Southeast Missouri State, where he was an FCS All-American. And then a guy who was added late in the process named Rotorius Torrance. He was a JUCO player of the year at the JUCO level, a 6'3" corner. You don't see that very often. I think he was kind of forgotten about in the steep cornerbacks rotation. People, thinking about what the lineup is going to look like. I don't think his name was brought up super often, but he is going to be in the starting mix right now. He has been actually one of their best playmakers all throughout fall camp. He had a 100-yard pick six in their second scrimmage, and in the scrimmage before that, he had a deflection on the goal line, batted down a pass on the goal line on 4th and goal. And so he's been a guy who's been all over the place, making really good plays for that defense. But that's, contrary to your previous question about the offensive line, the secondary is in a great spot. That they know what they've got right now. Guys are versatile enough to play multiple positions. We know Derek Mason is a phenomenal defensive coach, and yeah, they're certainly going to lean on that group at the start of the year, 100%.
All right, last question for you, Nathan. I really appreciate all the time you've given me, but we all anticipate Auburn's going to be 2-0 to start the season. I mean, they start with 2 cupcake teams. It would be stunning if they're not 2-0. How big is this Penn State game for, so many things, the season and people buying into Bryan Harsin? It's already announced it's going to be a whiteout game. I got to assume that Penn State's going to be a big favorite in that game. But, how much momentum can be captured if Auburn goes up there and goes on the road and beats Penn State?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's one of those games where a loss isn't the end of the world. I mean, it's week 3. You're starting out a new system on both offense and defense, and that, like you said, that's going to be a hostile road environment where Penn State's trying to bounce back, and they'll be a big favorite. Nobody is going to fault you that much for losing that game. But on the flip side, you're exactly right. If you pull off that upset, that is going to be a huge amount of momentum pushing forward, especially because you look at what Auburn's got after that. The first 2 SEC games for Bryan Harsin, welcome to the SEC, at LSU and at home against Georgia. So those aren't necessarily going to be easy wins. Both of those might be tougher than the Penn State matchup. And so if you can gather some momentum, maybe catapult yourself into the, not that polls matter that much, but, put yourself in the top 15, have your offense feeling good, you go and grab a road victory where we know Bo Nix hasn't been super consistent on the road in his career. And then you come and you play LSU and Georgia to start the SEC. You're 4-0 when going into those games. You're talking about maybe a completely different mindset for this team as opposed to if you dropped that Penn State game. So maybe not completely different. I don't know if that's necessarily fair because I do think this team, it's going to take its lumps. It's got a really difficult schedule. I think they can be if they end up 7-5, which is probably what I think they're going to land at, they'll probably be one of the better 7-5 teams in the country. They just got a really difficult schedule. But no, you're exactly right. That Penn State game, a loss is not a killer. Nobody's gonna turn up their nose too much at that one on a national level and say, oh, Bryan Harsin's not getting it done. But if you get a victory in a big setting like that, primetime ABC game, whiteout, everyone's watching, and they say, oh, looks like Auburn's got it together with Bryan Harsin. Maybe the offense is clicking and it's looking a lot different than it did under Gus Malzahn. That's going to be a really big benefit for the program. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that one in week 3.
All right, he's Nathan King. Got to give him a follow at Nathan King 24/7 Sports of Auburn 24/7 Undercover. I really appreciate you, Nathan.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
All right, so I want to say thanks again to Nathan King for hopping on the line. Give us the lowdown on the Auburn Tigers heading into the season. And, man, 2 interviews. This has been a long podcast, but just wanted to. Hey, we're not even done with the week. I about said finish strong for the week, but we'll have one more show. Cousin Shane will be on the next episode. We're really trying to crank things up as the season nears, but hope you guys appreciated all this coverage on this Thursday, going around the SEC and multiple interviews. And if you did, of course, give us that 5-star written review on the Apple Podcast app. We would appreciate that. And check us out on YouTube. That thing's blowing up. But, hey, that's all I got on this one. Catch you on the next one.